Thank you, Shavanya. Thank you, Serena, our music ministry, for that. Love that. You know, the power of now, to me, it's about being present, right? To really step into the power that it is when we get to take a breath, take a pause, and be present to what is. Now, a lot of times when we say that, and a lot of times when I've said that, it's about being present to the divine powers that are within, to the presence of God. And that's beautiful, and actually that is very supportive and that is very helpful. And I'm also getting to a place of recognizing that the power of now is also about being present to what I'm feeling, to what is going on within me, to my humanity, right? Because being present in the moment and where we're at now, especially here at Unity on the Bay, is to recognize that we are both 100% divine and 100% human. And part of the journey, part of the spiritual deepening to me is about bringing those two things into harmony, being able to experience our humanness from the recognition of our own divinity and being willing to hold both. You know, we're very complex individuals and we are able to hold multiple things to be true at once. You know, it used to be like, well, you know, get that thought out of your mind and you just got to think this way and you just got to think this way. There is a beauty, I think, in recognizing that we can hold both things, that I can see myself as powerful and as an expression of peace, while also recognizing that, oh my gosh, there are things going on within me, right? That I can know myself as a divine presence of love and recognize that there are times when I'm just not feeling it. You know, and that doesn't take away from the fact that I am the presence of love. It doesn't take away from the fact that I am the presence of peace when I'm maybe not fully aware of that. And I'm moving through like life's journeys to get to that place. Thank you so much for that beautiful meditation, Sandra. You know, and in your meditation, one of the things that I heard was about focusing and visioning the light. And I was thinking about that and sitting with that. And as I sit with that and recognize that that is the vision, there's a journey to get there, you know? And the beauty of the spiritual journey is to recognize it and be kind to ourselves through it and be gentle with ourselves through it when we feel we fall short of it or when just life has gone in the way of recognizing our truth. How many of us, knowing that we are divinely created as spiritual beings, whole and perfect and abundant, have had experiences of fear? How many of us have had experiences of pain and sadness, grief? How many people have suffered from depression or live with depression, right? And those things don't take away fact that we are divine expressions of God. Those experiences and that journey doesn't take away from the fact that we are that light. And we are uncovering the many ways in which we are bringing that light into our own life and into the world. And so how many ways we have found ourselves here at Unity on the Bay, so many of us found it through being through that dark night of the soul, right? Where we got to the place of recognizing that life as we knew it wasn't meant to be lived the way that we were living it, and that there was a different way and there was a different power that was at play that we can lean on, that we could rely on. Maybe you came to Unity because you just heard about the great music. Maybe you heard about the power of meditation. You know, whatever brought you to this place. One of the things that I imagine that you've connected with is the fact that one of the principles or one of the teachings of Unity is about having that positive mindset, right? To be able to experience life from the vantage point of where's the blessing in this? You know, how is this going to be for my ultimate good? You know, and the ways in which we open ourselves up to that positive mindset is really, really powerful. And like in anything, there can be sort of like the shadow part of it, right? Because sometimes in our desire, at least I'll speak for myself, in my desire to have that positive mindset because, you know, the way that I think and the way that I feel creates my experience, which creates my life, and I don't want to live that way. I don't want to experience that. But I I don't know if it's happened to you where you're kind of like jumping, and somebody shared with me earlier, like, well, you have to fake it till you make it. Yes, and there are some things we just can't fake, right? There are some things that are really deeply going on, and whether we say it's happening or not, it's happening. Been there, right? Experienced that. And so the power of being able to, yes, have a vision of having that positive mindset and stepping into that positive mindset, but without throwing all the stuff under the rug, right? Because there's a difference between doing the healing work and going through the process and being able to move through the journey that we are to get to that place of the positive mindset than just lifting up the rug and blowing things underneath, right? And I hope nobody sees it, and I hope I don't see that. And guess what? At some point in your life, you're gonna have to move that piece of furniture, you're gonna have to move that rug, and there is all that stuff. Been there? Have you experienced that? Some things that you just didn't want to pay attention to? Still there. Because as we know, what we resist persists. What we resist persists. And so if we are resisting looking at those things that sometimes don't make us feel good, or even the things that we may judge ourselves because, hey, we're good Unity students, right? We have to just see the blessing in this moment. We got to see the blessing. And if I can't see the blessing, I'm going to pretend that I know what that blessing is, right? And so all of a sudden we do away with the process. We do away with the journey, and we don't allow ourselves to really live into what is at hand. For me, part of the blessing is the healing that takes place from those experiences of our human nature, that when we are in the world of the senses and we are in anxiety, we are in fear, we are in depression, we are in sadness, in order for me to move deeply into the joy and be a joy that is sustainable, I gotta work on the other stuff, the things that keep me from having it be sustainable. That positive mindset and the shadow that it can create can really keep us from moving through life in a healthy way. Part of the healing power is to be able to see what needs to be healed, right? There's that old saying, we use it sometimes in meditations, reveal what must be revealed so that we can heal what must be healed. It's about being aware, it's about being open to it. And so sometimes I think that positivity and this positive mindset has become the new it's fine, right? How many of us, how are you doing? I'm fine. How are you doing? All good. If you're from Unity, how's it going? All is well, right? All is well. Never mind that I've got a lot of bills to pay. I'm not sure how I'm going to pay it. Never mind that I just have a flat tire and I scream bloody hell in the middle of the expressway. All is well. I'm good. I'm fine. You know, fine is the acronym. There's a new acronym. It says feelings inside, not shared. Feelings inside, not shared. When we just go into the fight. It was funny because I was having the experience this morning. By the way, at 4:30 in the morning, I'm feeling sick as a dog, and I was thinking to myself, which Unity minister will pick up the phone at 4:30 in the morning and come to a Sunday talk at Unity on the Bay? Didn't think of many that would pick up at that time. And it's okay, because I started feeling better and better and better, but I was still not feeling 100%. I still wasn't feeling that great. And then I walk in here, and all of a sudden I notice that I'm like putting on this smile, trying to like ramp myself up with all this energy. And as soon as everybody was saying like, good morning, how are you doing? I'm fine. I just wrote down, fine is feelings inside not shared. But it's just that old way of thinking, that old pattern. How many of us have been taught that when a stranger or somebody that you know is asking you, they really don't want to know, right? Like they just really don't want to know, so you just say you're fine, right? Like how many of us like say, how are you? And don't even wait for the person to respond, right? It's like, we just ask a question. Wait, why don't we wait for the answer? And are we comfortable with whatever the answer is? Or are we just saying it and we are wanting people to say, it's all fine, it's all good, all is well, because maybe we're not comfortable with the things that aren't so good, don't feel so well, and we're in the journey of recognizing and healing. Psychotherapist Robert Masters talks about spiritual bypassing. And he says this, the spiritual bypassing is the use of spiritual practices and beliefs to avoid dealing with our painful feelings, unresolved wounds, and developmental needs. See, for me, spiritual tools and spiritual practices are meant to be part of the healing process. So it's not to cap over something, it's to reveal something and reveal something about ourselves that says, I can heal this, I can move through this. And regardless of what is going on, I can hold the truth that I'm feeling yucky and I am whole. I am complete. And I think part of it comes from the idea, and this is something that we in Unity come to understand in a different light, that we aren't born with original sin, but that we are born, and actually we are original blessing. But because it's so embedded, I mean, it's a big one. It's really a big, big one. And that idea of original sin, I think, plays with us so much that we don't even realize it. Because when I sit with, why do I say it's fine? I start to think, well, if I don't say I'm fine, like maybe somebody won't think as highly of me. And what does that matter? Well, maybe because I don't feel that worthy. And why do I not feel that worthy? Oh, because I was told I was born of original sin, and that there was something wrong with me, and that I was separate from God, and I was separate from the power that is within. I'm here to tell you that for me, I've come to realize no matter how I'm feeling, I am the divine being. No matter how I'm showing up, I am God in expression. Regardless of how much I accept it or I get stuck in old ways and patterns of being, I am created in light, and I am the light that is here to be shared with the world. And so it's a journey, and I think we owe it to ourselves to be kind and gentle with ourselves as we move through it, and we owe it to ourselves to really clean up all that stuff that is underneath the rug. I get it. It can look a little dirty sometimes, and it can look a little messy sometimes, and we're not comfortable with messy sometimes, and that's the place where God is, right? Like if we really believe that God is, and that God is everywhere and in every space, and that God is everything, then God is in the messiness too. And the more that we allow ourselves to recognize it, and the more that we allow ourselves to make peace with that and bring some harmony within ourselves as we move through those things, the greater opportunity we will have to experience and see and feel the God that always is. One of the things that we've been talking about with Mental Health Awareness Month and the different things that we've been doing to really support all of us in getting more comfortable with some of the challenges that we may be moving through, or some of the challenges that our loved ones may be moving through, is this understanding that sometimes it can just feel very overwhelming. I came to think about something though, like how many of us have felt overwhelmed? How many of us have felt separate? How many of us have felt alone? Isn't it amazing that all those feelings are so common and universal? And those feelings tend to play with us and make us feel like we are all alone in those feelings, yet we all have them. It actually is part of one of the ways in which we can connect with each other if we allow ourselves to connect with each other from a very vulnerable place, to recognize that it is part of what binds us and bonds us, and that we can walk with each other towards recognizing the light in our lives, towards remembering the truth of our being, towards using the spiritual practices and tools to be able to not get stuck in that, not feel alone, not feel overwhelmed, and go through the healing process. For me, one of the things that is really important is that when we come to Unity, and however you found Unity, yes, the message, yes, the idea of God being within and expressing in us, and what a powerful thing that we come to be part of the community, right? Because I think that's one of the most powerful things that any of us can experience, that when we forget our truth, or when we are feeling alone, we can come to a Sunday service, we can go to a class and recognize that there are people and individuals that we can lean on, that will remind us of our truth. And at the same time, when others forget their truth, we can be their support system, in that there could be so much stigma around not being okay, right? So much so that we start to just say, I'm fine, I'm good, all is well, when we really don't believe it, and we don't even want to step into the fine, good, and all is well. But the moment that we break down the stigma, when we stop pretending that we're okay, I think it opens up the window for the healing to bring us to the place of okayness, bring us to the place of well-being in that. Because see, our divinity is not dependent on whether we are okay. Our divinity is not dependent on whether we are okay. Our divinity just is. God's love is not dependent on our ability to feel lovable. Simply God's love is. And we don't have to feel powerful to realize that the power was always within us. We just have to do the work to support ourselves in being open to realizing and moving into it more fully. But we don't have to suffer in silence as we're doing that, as we're journeying. And sometimes it is in speaking out our suffering that we can start to realize God's grace working in the situation, if we are open to it. I want to share with you, and I have to tell you, it's a little bit of a tearjerker, and I was even thinking about whether I should share it, because I know part of us wants to come to Unity on the Bay and feel good and go out into the world and go knock them dead, right? And there is that component of it, and our vulnerability is a part of that too, and our awareness of being okay with each other in our suffering is a part of that too. This is a story that came out in the Huffington Post a couple of days ago. And it's a mother speaking about a situation with her family. So she starts with, "My husband and almost 3-year-old daughter came through the door to my hospital room with shining eyes. We just met a woman in the elevator who was here to visit her new grandchild, and Ada told her about Benjamin. She wants to come talk to you," he told me. My heart sank. I was 2 days out from a stillbirth of our son. Grief-stricken and lost, the last thing I wanted to deal with was another stranger. The revolving door of nurses was exhausting enough despite their gentle hands and kind smiles. They put me at the end of the hall to recover, far away from the cries of living babies and celebrating families. There was a sign on the door warning those about to enter that there was grief in the room instead of new life. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door, and an elegant woman in her 60s stepped inside. She smiled as my husband stood to greet her. Stopping at the end of my bed, she took a deep breath. "I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to tell you my story. My son died too, 35 years ago. I wasn't allowed to see him. I wasn't allowed to mourn him. I've only ever told a few people about him, but I wanted to share him with you." She shared how surreal it was to never lay eyes on him, to not be allowed to speak of him, to be told to hurry up, to get pregnant again, and move on. We cried together over lost boys. When she left, she patted my hand. "Thank you for letting me talk about him." I held on. "Thank you for reminding me I'm not alone." This happened over the next few months. Having lunch at the local taco joint or standing in line at the grocery store, I would be wearing my brave face, pretending to be fine, and my cherubic child would lean forward and announce, "Our baby died." She hadn't yet learned not to talk about grief in public, or that stillbirth is a form of loss so painful most folks would prefer to ignore it. She was too young to know when a stranger asks how you are, you're supposed to say, "I'm fine," and move on. She was too young to know when a stranger asks of you, "How are you?" you're supposed to say, "I'm fine," and move on. Sometimes the conversation would stutter and die, but often I would crack wide open. I heard stories, I heard pain and struggles, but mostly I heard love. I learned people wanted permission to talk about their losses, even for a moment in the checkout line. They wanted to be able to say, "I hurt too." I learned that my sadness was better served by saying, "I'm having a hard day," than pretending I was fine. I had to learn to exist within my grief to survive. I needed to understand its shape and weight, its texture. And in being with myself in my hardest moments, I learned how to be with others in theirs. It surprised me how those conversations helped to sustain and nourish me. Being out in the world still wasn't easy, but if I could show up with honesty and tenderness, I was almost always met with those in return. Recently, I found myself standing in a sweltering parking lot, tears spilling over as I listened to a friend's bewilderment, anger, and disbelief about her brother's sudden death. She took the look of the newly bereaved, wearing shock like a suffocating second skin. The look I'm sure the woman saw in me 14 years ago in my hospital room. For a moment, my friend met me with honesty, whispering, "I'm not fine." And in the quicksand of sadness, I held her up so she could breathe. Take a breath with me. We can hold all of it. It's a story of pain. It's a story of love. It's a story of hurt. It's a story of healing. It's a story of feeling lost. And it is a story of God's grace showing up in others for us. That's where I have come to be, to recognize that our spirituality and who we are and how we want to show up in the world and how we allow God to be with us in all the moments of life is part of the power, that it is part of the grace, and it is part of the healing, and it is part of our wholeness. Jack Kornfield says, true spirituality requires us to be present for life, to look deeply at the sorrow that exists now in our world, and to look at our individual and collective relationship to it, to bear witness to it, to acknowledge it instead of running away. It's about being real. It's about being real. If divine reality is that God always is, that also in the world of senses and in the world of life, that we can also be real about the things that we are going through and hold both and know that both are part of our reality and both are a part of our journey and both are a part of recognizing what God is in our life and being able to step more fully into it. See, our lives can be so rich when we explore our constructs, our fears, our shadows, our hurts, not to stay in them, but to simply allow them to share the deeper truth that is at hand. And I'm comforted by Psalm 23, and many of you know Psalm 23. It's the one that begins with, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." It's one of the most famous and popular Psalms. In it, it says, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me." See, God is in the darkest of valleys. Our comfort isn't in denying that valley. Our comfort is in walking through that valley with the faith that God is and that we are, and everything within us is going to get us through the pain, the hurt, the anguish, the depression, whatever it may be. And when we can't remember that for ourselves, to reach out and seek out the support of others so that we can lean on their understanding of our truth so that healing can truly take place. Now, in moments of feeling overwhelmed, because we are getting a little bit more aware of mental health challenges and how we can all, support it and move through them and support others in moving through them, our partners at NAMI, who we supported at the Walk for Mental Health Awareness last week, she sent us these 5 steps that we can take in the moments of we're feeling overwhelmed. And of course, me, and we are unity, so I added a little bit to it. But it's that understanding, like that in every single moment, simply God is, I am, we are. God is, I am, we are. And so, grounding technique when you're feeling overwhelmed. First thing that they invite us to do is just think about the 5 things that you can see. 5 things that you can see around you when you're feeling overwhelmed, to calm yourself down. And I'm going to add, speak to yourself, God is. Then you move into 4 things that you can feel in that moment. I'm going to invite you to add to that, I am. 3 things that you can hear around you, God is. 2 things that you can smell, I am. And then the 1 thing that you can taste. And I invite you to speak, I am one with God. In those moments of feeling overwhelmed, in those moments of feeling separate, in those moments of feeling lonely, in those moments where you're not sure what to do, remember the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. God is, I am. God is, I am one with God. One of the most beautiful parts of the prayer protection that we speak at the end of our service isn't the all is well part, which, by the way, was added after the poet wrote it, and he did not like anything to be added to his poems, but we sure did. All the prayer for protection ended with, wherever I am, God is. Wherever I am, God is. Whatever I am feeling, God is. Whatever I look at, whatever I don't look at, God is. Whatever process or journey I am on, God is. God is. That is our saving grace. That is what brings us comfort, to know that no matter what it looks like, how messy it may be, how not pretty it may feel at times, how unenlightened it may be, God is still there. And God will always be there. As long as we are open and receptive to seeing God, we will see God. But that doesn't change the fact that God was always there, because God is. It is okay not to be okay, because within us is the greatest power we have ever known. And that power is our own divinity, is the presence of God. And with that, we can walk through any valley with faith, with trust, and with knowing that the vision is to see and experience the light that we are. Thank you all. Namaste.